G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. We'll have all the show notes and any resources mentioned in the cast on our website. In 2004, joined two mates in a garden shed to grow the business, which sells heated flooring and handrail solutions. A few years in, his two business partners put a generous offer to him to buy them out, then ground through the process, which he admits was challenging. Luke's advice: choose your business partners carefully. Just because you are friends does not mean you work well in business. Over the last 16 years, grew sales 10 to 15% year on year, and he shares a superb sales tip using the T-Rex email. The first year they were featured on the Block TV show almost sent him bankrupt after doubling sales. Shafted overnight by their Big Four bank they use for trade or import finance, he put balance and family front and centre from day one and talks about a balance technique he uses to ensure the bond is strong with his 4 kids. Felt he had succeeded when, for business, still in the process, but personal success comes from 25 plus years of marriage and 4 kids he not just loves, but likes as people and is friends with. Hardest thing about growing a small business? Funding it. What he would tell himself on day one of starting out is, risks are worth it, it does pay off, it's going to be okay, and work out what you don't know and how to do. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Luke Chant from Hotwire Heating, based in Melbourne, Australia. Thanks for your time this morning, Luke.
No worries, great to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. I heard you speaking with Tim Reed from his awesome podcast, Small Business, Big Marketing, and yours, especially at one part of your interview there, your chat with him really inspired me and impressed me, and so I reached out and asked you to come on the cast.
Which part was it you liked?
It was the bit about balance, which we'll get to later on. It's one of the questions there, but because I think you're rare in the sense that you pretty much had the balance rock in your fish tank from day one, and I think you got it right, and you got a lovely story which you shared on Tim's cast, which you may talk about today. But we'll get to that a bit later on. Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does, and how it makes money.
Sure. So Hotwire Heating is a wholesale distribution company. I import underfloor heating and heated shower rails, and we distribute around Australia. So clients such as Beaumont Tiles and Bunnings and these sorts of places stock our products. So we mainly are in a box comes in, box goes out. But we do some managed installation work for specific clients, but generally we're just moving boxes in the door and out the door.
Yep. And your market's purely residential, there's no commercial?
Not a lot. Occasionally we might do a hotel or something of that nature, but yeah, not a sort of shopping centre or something like that.
Yeah, right. And how'd you start out?
2 friends of mine actually started the company. I was looking to do something for myself, and it was only about 6 months old. It was still, the entire inventory was in a small garden shed at the time I sort of came on board, and they were looking for a passive income. They didn't want to work in the business, so once they'd done the sort of basic start off, they wanted someone to run it. So I came on board at that point, and then was able to buy them out a few years later, thanks to a very generous offer from them.
Great.
So I was able to buy it out, and then so I've been running the business for 16 years, and it's been mine exclusively for about 8 now.
8, great. And so started in 2004. How old were you when you decided to get into it?
So I just turned 30. I had a very cushy job at the time. We were pregnant with our 4th child in 6 years. Mm-hmm.
Jeez, wow.
Yeah, 4 kids in 6 years. I was married at 20. Had all our kids at the time I was 30.
Wow. Yep.
And then I sort of threw it all in for this company that was operating out of a garden shed. It was 6 months old and didn't even really have an office. One of the directors had a building company, and there was a bit of a hot desk set up where there was staff sort of moving around, and I could occasionally get a spot to sit at, but we really didn't even have any assets or, I said a very small amount of stock. And but I always wanted to do something for myself, so I threw in the cushy job with the company car and jumped feet first into this little business.
Great. And do you have any key numbers you can use to illustrate the growth of the business over those 14 years?
Yeah, so we've We've grown every year with the exception of the GFC where we basically broke even that year. So we've grown at about 10% year on year. A couple of years were up towards 15, but we've grown consistently year on year, even through some pretty tough times. Even including this year under COVID, we've had some really strong months, and some months where I've actually had our record months in the middle of COVID, where half our clients are operating on really limited staff, and so it's been consistently we've grown year on year.
That's great. I mean, even 10 to 15% per annum is terrific growth consistently, and that's actually how Tim reached out to you, wasn't he? He saw your article on LinkedIn. Do you want to tell the audience what the title of that is, and we can link through to it?
Yeah, I wrote it. I was sitting around a fire in my backyard with a friend of mine who's lovely guy. He's very risk averse, so he's very much a guy who would be employed rather than someone who would start their own business, and which is not a criticism of him at all, just a statement of who he is. And we were chatting about some of the things I'd done to sort of grow my business, and he said, you should write some of those down. And I'd never really considered it, and so that weekend I did a bit of a brain dump, and I called my article 10 Steps to Business Success by a Moderately Successful Business Owner, and put it on LinkedIn. And ironically, my article on being moderately successful has been quite successful. And I'm now, I think this is the third podcast, and it's been in a couple of magazines and everything as well. It's been quite interesting. I think people really like the fact that I was just going, you know what, here's, and the article starts out, it says, my last name's not Gates or Zuckerberg, but I've done, here's what I've done to achieve some success in my little business. And I think people just appreciated the fact I was just being really honest and sharing some and not even all the keys were specifically business related. They were just things I've done that you don't grow sales but keep your life in balance.
Yeah, it's wonderful. The article, I've read it. It's really good, and we'll link through to it in the show notes so people can read that as well.
Yeah, great.
When was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
Well, you've really got to define success to answer that question properly, don't you?
That's the next question,
Yeah. So from a business point of view, I would say, I'm still in the process of succeeding. I'm growing a business. It's not yet where I'd like it to be. From a personal point of view, I've been married 25 plus years now to the same woman.
That is very successful in this day and age.
And I've got, and as I said, we were married at 20 and 19, married 25 plus years. I've got 4 kids who I not just love, but I really like as great individual people I'm now friends with. And so, those 2 things alone, I feel like my life is quite successful from that point of view. So I guess it really depends how you define the success question.
Yeah, it's good. I think the way you've answered that is terrific, because a lot of people will just focus on the business growth or financial success, but that's what I really like about your approach to it, which we'll get to in a minute, about the balance side of things.
Sure.
What's the number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Marketing strategy, is that what you're getting at there?
Well, I guess anything, or if there's one thing that you think that it's really helped with your marketing, it's just...
Sure. Well, one of the key points I made in that article was just to keep showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Woody, and I quoted Woody Allen says, 80% of success is just showing up. And I won a client not so long ago, quite a good client. I've been chasing him for a little while, and when he, a few phone calls and a couple of emails after I'd sort of presented to him, and then when we were sitting down to sign the contract, I said to him, "Why did you choose Hotwire?" Because he told me he was meeting with a couple of my competitors, and his response was essentially, "You kept showing up." He never mentioned pricing to me. He never mentioned product quality. His response to why he chose my company was because I was the one that kept asking for his business. Yeah,
right. And is that due to using a CRM, some kind of software to track to make sure that you're getting back to people?
Yeah, I certainly do. We've got a fully integrated CRM through the system, through the company, and we use that to track all of that. I use Zoho through zero business. I've recently changed over to that, having not been happy with a couple other products.
Yep.
But yeah, we use that, and that's been, to me, that's one of the key successes, because so many people don't do that. They'll send a quote and wait for the response. Well,
Yeah.
I send a quote, and we'll have an email sequence following that quote up, and then just task prompting it as well, that pop up, and it's just really important to actually just keep following people up, because people, in this case, he essentially signed the contract with me because I nagged him enough that he wanted to make me go away, and it was the easiest way to make me go away. I won the business.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one of the things I say when I'm speaking in a sales context within companies that I work with. If I feel that the sales team or people involved aren't really being persistent enough, I've got a great little phrase I use, which is chase them until you're one step short of restraining order, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to, because that's when people are going to buy from you. And I just keep bringing people until they're just sick of hearing from me.
Yeah, because people are busy. May not always be that they don't want to talk to you or engage or go with you guys. It's just that they're busy. Yeah. They forget to call you back or whatever.
Yeah, I used an approach. Have you heard of the T-Rex email?
No, do tell.
T-Rex email is great. When all else has failed and they're not responding to your emails anymore. And I actually, again, I won a national client with this email.
Sorry, is this T-Rex as in the band or the dinosaur?
The dinosaur.
Yep.
So all else has failed. They're not. This is the Hail Mary pass. Like you got nothing to lose anymore because they haven't returned your last 5 phone calls. They're not responding to your emails. And I sent this email to him, and the subject of the email is, "Have you been eaten by a T-Rex?"
That gets their attention.
And the email is basically a short summary. It says, "Hey, I hadn't heard from you. I figured one of a few things had happened. First thing, you've been eaten by a T-Rex.
Yep.
2, you've fallen and you can't get up. 3, you're not interested anymore."
Brilliant.
If it's number 1, I'm really sorry, to hear that. If it's number 2, let me know and I'll call help. If it's number 3, no problems. Let me know and I'll never bother you again.
Oh, that's great.
And I've been chasing this guy for months. He hadn't responded. And then I'd hit send. And before I could even then think about it, I literally within about a minute, I had a reply for him, and he said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Still keen to talk to you. And I went out and won the business."
That's very, very smart and wily. Yeah.
It's great. It's the only time I've used it. I've never got to that complete Hail Mary stage with any other client, but I used it then. It was really effective.
That's good, yeah. And from the sound of it, your sales process here, you've automated a bit of that with sequences, follow-up emails, etc. So you've taken a lot of that workload off you and written, I assume, smart email templates so it doesn't necessarily sound automated so you can leverage your time much, much better.
Yeah, depending on the size of the deal, you'd have it in an email sequence, or it's simply a task prompting you to write a more personalised email or a phone call. Obviously, the larger deals, you don't want to have it all sequenced. You want to be more on top of that. But most of the systems are all sequenced like that.
And that's something Zoho does. You can sequence and set reminders, obviously being a CRM.
Yeah. So you can stick an email in a what's called a campaign, and that can then have an automated workflow, or just simply have an email or a notification to prompt you to follow them up again.
Got it. Yeah. How did you fund your business?
Yeah, with great difficulty, to be honest. We've really bootstrapped it from the start. I own it 100%. I've never had an investor in the company, so it's been growing it as I could.
Mm-hmm.
I had and as an importer, that's quite challenging because it sometimes it could be up to 6 months from when I buy something to when I get paid for it.
Yes.
So there's a really long lead time in there, and you're buying, a container load of product out of Asia. It's expensive and time consuming. So we had a trade finance facility with a major bank who I won't dump them in it on your podcast, but I had a trade finance with a major bank who I went to use the facility one day to pay for my stock, and it was closed.
Right.
So I contacted the bank, and they said, we've closed all those facilities. We're not supporting them anymore. And I said, well, were you going to tell me this?
Jeez.
And they said, we sent you a letter and then I asked them to what address, and it was to an old address, which they could see had actually been returned to them. And then having my correct email and phone number, they didn't attempt any other form of contact. They just simply closed my trade finance facility. So I woke up one morning trying to buy stock for my company, and through no fault of my own, had simply no ability to do so.
Yep.
So from there, I moved around to a bunch of different banks to try and get a new facility, and eventually, I actually landed quite recently on a really good product. I was actually interviewed on the ABC on the 7:30 report. They were doing a story on businesses trying to get finance. So this will give you an indication of how bad the big four banks are.
Yep.
Which is no surprise to anybody. But I was interviewed as a business owner who was having difficulty getting finance from the banks, and that was my story. That it was challenging, and they're always saying how they help small business, but I just simply couldn't get the support I was looking for. The person interviewed after me was the Commonwealth Bank CEO, and he was the next person featured on the story, talking about how he loves helping small business, etc., etc. Nobody from any of the big four banks contacted me.
Oh, that's a shocker.
Not even anybody from the Commonwealth Bank. I was interviewed just before their CEO saying I can't get finance, and my company name and my personal name were in the story, so it was not hard to find me. I did get, before the story had even finished going to air, I was having calls and messages on LinkedIn from finance brokers and those sorts of people contacting me.
Yeah.
Nobody from any of the big four banks. No business management team reached out. So it was really interesting and just showed how bad they really are.
Oh shit, that is just low hanging fruit. That's not hard. It's not rocket surgery. That's just, I'm in awe of that.
Yeah, I was waiting for the calls. I thought surely tomorrow morning, at least from the Commonwealth Bank, given that they were on the next one up, somebody from the Commonwealth Bank will give me a call.
Yep. Anyone in media in the bank there surely would have seen that and gone, oh, I'll throw it over to someone, they should chase this up, and then follow it up with some press saying, hey, we helped Luke out.
So am I allowed to talk about, I've just done the Commonwealth in it.
No, that's right.
So
Go.
I actually found a really good facility through a bank called Judo Bank, which is a relatively new player in the Australian market. But just like where bankers used to, where they would actually sit down and learn about your business rather than just look at your P&L and your balance sheet. And they came out and met with me for a start, which I couldn't even get the other banks to come and meet with me.
Yep.
No one would even come to my office and see what we did. These guys came out, sat down with me, and I had a full facility, exactly what I was looking for, approved and operational within a couple of weeks.
Wow. That's the way it's done. I mean, I've had some experience with Bankwest. They're quite personable like that, with a company I sit on the board of, and we've got a pretty big project coming up soon, expansion, and they've been really good, and that just makes all the difference.
Absolutely. So it's been a big challenge funding the growth of the business. We had an opportunity about 7 years ago. We were invited to through our association with Beaumont Tiles, who are one of our big customers. They were just starting as a supplier on the TV show The Block, and they wanted to feature Hotwire. So we did that. For those that are fans of the show, it was the first year that Kyle and Cara were on the show. They've been very successful as a result of that. And that, because we were featured on The Block, that year our turnover doubled. So we talked about sort of 10 to 15% growth as an average, but that particular year, after The Block, turnover doubled, which sounds great, but it actually was the closest I've ever come to going bankrupt, because
you got to fund it.
I got to fund it. So we'd obviously sea freight our products in, but I was flying pallet loads of product in.
Not making money on it.
Exactly, not making any money on that pallet because it costs so much to fly in compared to sticking on a LCL shipment in a container.
Low boat, yep.
Yeah, so a really challenging year. It looked great from the outside. People would, talk about your business doubling in a year, but it was the closest we ever come to going through. So that was a pretty challenging year, and I was pulling money from all over the place to try and fund that.
Yep. And you weren't at the new bank, Juno, by then, were you?
No, I wasn't. I've been on Juno for a little while now, but that was a fun little period of time.
Yeah, and When after the bank kind of closed your trade account, and you got all those requests from second-tier lenders and brokers, etc., did you end up going through a broker to find? Is it judo or juno? So Peter's got this right.
Judo, like the martial art.
Judo. So Peter will find
judo,
them in the show notes and just cut.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't be more impressed with them as a facility. They were really good, and they had the system operational really quickly. So I certainly had been approached by different brokers, but these guys were really good.
Great. So they came direct to you. You didn't have to go through a broker. Yeah.
No.
What about any other bank finance or grants?
I haven't ever found any grants I was eligible for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a couple this year under the various federal and state government handouts that have been going on, but previous to that, I hadn't found any that I was eligible for.
And if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry? Ignore the fact we're in the middle of COVID at the moment.
If I was would I go into my industry again? With the right funding, it certainly would be easier than the way I've done it, that's for sure. But I quite like the game I'm in, and the products we sell are really good and really add value to your home and nice to live with. So they're certainly good from that point of view. I'd like a bit more funding to live the last 15 years again if I was going to do that.
Yep. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Well, most stressful. I mentioned my partners before, and they were both great guys. I have nothing bad to say about them, and they made me a very generous offer to buy them out, which I was able to do. But we differed a lot on how to do business, and that ended up being a crisis point where we had to do something different, and we tried a bunch of different things, and realistically, the only way was just for us to go our separate ways. And while we were working out how to do that, it was certainly a very difficult period of time. So even though they were great guys, and as I said, don't have a bad thing to say about either of them, it was a really difficult time with those business partners at that point. So really choosing your partners carefully is critically important. And even though I was actually really good friends with one of them, when it actually came to doing business together, it just didn't work. Yeah. And choosing your partners is really critical.
Yeah, interesting. This morning, a friend sent through a Paul Graham article on the top 13 things he would recommend. And the first thing is choose your co-founders wisely.
Yeah. And I even thought I had, because I was good friends with them and they were good guys. But when it came down to the day-to-day thing, we just couldn't work well together because we did things in different ways and had different expectations.
Got it. Yeah. And out of interest,
particularly around risk profiles.
Yes.
And I think that's how risk adverse are you, and what are you prepared to do? And that's when the most conflict's going to come with business partners. If you've got different levels of risk profiles, you're really gonna clash.
Yeah, absolutely. A board I chair actually. We've had shareholders with that exact problem. Very different risk approaches to risk and experience with risk. And I've had to educate both. Well, one side of the party, I guess, the more conservative side, I could totally understand their point of view. And I said to the other, big shareholder, I said, I understand your frustration that they're risk averse, don't want to take on more debt, et cetera, don't want to grow as fast, but you also need to understand their journey. They came out of university, late 80s, early 90s, recession hit, so all they've known, that was planted deeply in their mind of all of the high unemployment, high interest rates. So you've got to really consider that, because this guy's a friend of mine. He's about my age, quite young, and but his other shareholders were 10 or so years older. One's 15 years older, and they've just had a different journey in life. And that really changed the way that he thought about it, and took a lot of the friction out of the conversations as well, because both parties could understand each other a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with the kind of discussions with exiting, did you guys have agreements in place, like shareholder agreement, to make that conversation easy, or was that kind of...
No, it wasn't, because as I said, when we started, it was a tiny little garden shed enterprise. We didn't have those sorts of agreements in place. That it did make it a little bit challenging at the end, particularly because there were three. So there's three different opinions.
Yep.
And there was lots of not so much conflict, because we were all trying to resolve the situation in an amicable way. There wasn't one person who was, no one had done the wrong thing, and nobody was, bitter or anything about it. It was, we were just trying to resolve this situation as best we could. So we didn't have it properly done. And I would certainly, should I go into, at some stage, should I go into business with someone else again? You'd want to make sure that was very clearly outlined at the start.
Yeah, definitely. Shareholders' agreement are so valuable. I had my dad on the cast a few weeks ago, and his first run at business, they didn't, and that ended poorly and messy. And the second time, he learnt from that, obviously, and made sure that was all in place. But back to the point on conflict, one of my favourite sayings, Mark Horseman from Manager Tools, his father, they're both Texan, but there's a Texan saying, I remember him on one of the casts saying, the definition of conflict is two people in the same county. It's just so true. Yeah. Everyone's got different memories of what was discussed or what happened, and different impressions of what should happen, and what's right and what's wrong. So, yeah, and when things go really bad or really well, that's when that conflict can really be heightened.
Yeah, no doubt.
And what area in business do you feel you had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Did I have to work on, or do I have to work on?
Either one. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on or are working on to add the most to add the greatest value?
Yeah, so probably in the area of finances, around managing that. I come from a sales background, where it's just whatever you take to win the sale and to win the deal and get out there. But and I'm also dyslexic, so then managing the numbers is not my skill set.
Yep.
So I've had to be really clear about simply hiring good people and trusting them to do the job. And I've had the same accountant and same bookkeeper for a long time now, and I trust them implicitly to do what they do for me very well.
Yep.
And that's been critical for me because of my weaknesses in that area. I need to make sure that I've got really good people there. And so what I've, in a sense, I guess I haven't learnt, because I've just gone, I need the best people to do this. No matter how well I try and learn how to do this, I'm not going to do it
as well as them.
Because I just see numbers in the wrong place. So I'll see a number on the wrong line than what it's actually on. So no matter how hard I try and get that spreadsheet right, it's not going to be right because I see the number in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's one of the most critical advisors you can have as an accountant, as I like to say. Find a great accountant, hug them, and never let them go.
Yeah, absolutely, and really happy with the financial team I've got backing me up and advice from that point of view. And I think the temptation is, as a business owner, is to feel like you have to be an expert in everything.
Yeah, true.
And people, you got to do this, you got to that, and I'm like, well, actually, no. And particularly, as I said, with my dyslexia, I've got to go, well, there's actually no point in me. I need to be able to read the balance sheet, but there's no point in me learning how to do bookkeeping because I'm not going to get it right.
Yeah.
There's no value in me doing that. I'm just going to cost myself money.
Yep. That's so very wise.
I don't have to learn how to do that. I just got to hire people I trust to do it well.
Yep. Totally agree. What have you enjoyed least about managing the growth?
I don't mind taking a risk or two, but there's been a few times where I've been, lying awake at night wondering how it's going to pay off. And there's a couple of big ones there. We'd actually sold our house and we're looking for our next property. So we were renting for a year or so, and we had all our equity in the bank, and I had an opportunity to win a really large customer who was going to buy a big lot of stock. And so I temporarily convinced my wife to let me put some of that money back in the business for a period of time. It was pretty much a guarantee. It was as guaranteed a sale as you're ever going to get. They'd signed a contract, they'd agreed when they were going to pay the bill. It was very much, a guaranteed deal, but they weren't going to pay. As I mentioned before, it's a long lead time with my products. They weren't going to pay until the goods had arrived.
Yep.
Which is obviously fair enough. But then there were a few, whilst the sale was guaranteed, there were a few unavoidable delays. And in the meantime, we'd found a house and agreed to a contract of sale. And the date where I needed to get the money back into the business and the date where the house was settling were coming closer and closer together.
Yep, I know where this is going.
And so I knew the money was coming, but so it wasn't too scary because it wasn't will the money arrive. It was just, can I get this to and then after a good couple of months of these, I could see it happening a couple of months out. I got the money back into our. I got the money to the business so I could transfer it back to our personal account the day before the property settled.
Wow, that is leaving it to the last minute, isn't it? It's on the edge.
So, that was, whilst I then won a very significant client by taking that risk. There was certainly a few moments here where nearly lost the house we'd been looking for some time and found exactly the property we wanted. And, I came within 24 hours of losing it and probably copping a fee from maybe not even getting all that deposit back as well. So that was times like that aren't a whole lot of fun.
Wow, no. I interviewed my dad in episode 36, and he talks about two really big pinch points. One was I don't know if you remember Pyramid Bank. I think they were founded out of Colac, and he got word from his brother who was living in Colac to pull their money out. They pulled their $6 million out. They, hammered the bank. They didn't want to give it to him. And a week later, the bank went under. But to fund their growth, which blew me away, I didn't know this, they were putting $3 million on the overnight money market just after the recession to earn 21% per annum interest. So funded their growth, got $600,000 or $700,000 from a very risky move, which is incongruent to the way I know my dad. He's always been quite a conservative fellow. So that really shocked me.
Yeah.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I'm a very competitive person. I've played a lot of sport over the years, and for me, it's a game. It's just like a sport. It's whenever I go for a bike ride, and I do a bit of mountain biking, and I've got routes I take, and I know how long it's going to take me to do each ride. And every time I ride, it's can I beat the time I made? I did the route before, and it's the same for me in business. Every month, it's like right. Last September over this month, this September we're going to beat it. And and my business is because I sell mainly heating products. Our business is a bit cyclical. So we look at it month by month more so than sort of quarter on quarter from that point of view. But look at it and go, what's next and how do we beat it? And for me, it's a challenge. It's really almost a sport for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Challenge of beating myself, and I don't care about my competitors. I'm not interested. I don't know how much they sell. I've got no access to any of that information. It's not about that for me. It's just about beating myself.
Yep.
What happened before, and making sure we do better again the next time.
Good attitude to have. What's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think it's very easy when you look at. I mentioned before, about how I started that article that my last name is not Gates or Zuckerberg. I think it's very easy to feel like you have to be all things to all people and know everything about everything. You've got to know marketing and know this and know that. And I realised I went to a presentation by a guy called Dale Beaumont, who runs a program called Business Blueprint, and he said something that. He said, if you knew how to grow your business to the next level, you would have already done it.
Yeah, wise words.
Yeah, and I went, yeah, you're right. I clearly I don't, and there's no shame in that. So I joined his, which is a business development program essentially, and it's been incredible. And what I've learned in that program is you don't actually need to know everything. You just need to make sure you've got the resources available to help you in that. So I've outsourced a lot of our IT, and I just get it done. I don't have to know how to fix the problem; just get someone else to fix it. And I think the temptation is, as a small business owner, is to try and make sure you know everything about everything. I just don't think we need to. We just get the resources to help you and do what you do really well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Delegate, find some A players, whether they're internal or even external consultants, and just lean on them and focus on where you can add the greatest value. It sounds like for you, it's in the sales area.
Yeah, look, I'm really good at winning the business, but I'm not actually so good at maintaining it because of that competition level. In me, it's all about winning the sale. And once I've won the sale, I'm like, right, what's next? So, I've got really good people who maintain that relationship for me once the business has been won, and we'll look after them and do a brilliant job of it. And I'll look for the next big thing.
And what's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Number one habit I would say would be to make sure that you do keep a really good routine in your business. And I guess a little bit depends on your personality, but a lot of people work well really late at night, others work well in the morning. So it doesn't matter what your routine is, but I think you've got to make sure that you have a regular routine, and included in that is making sure that you're regularly looking at what you're trying to achieve in your business. So I have a reminder every Monday morning, goes off at 7:30, and it says, look at your vision for your company.
Yeah, brilliant.
Read your vision, read your goals. Yep. And every Monday morning it says 7:30 bang. That's what it starts my week with.
That's good. It's a good anchor for your week.
Yeah, just okay. It's a company vision I've written down. It goes 5 years into the future and then 10 years in the future, and you read it every week. And then you look at what your goals you're trying to achieve the next few months, and just refresh your mind. And I start early today. I'm better early in the morning than late. I don't tend to work many nights, but it's more.
I'm the same. I'm
making sure.
Yeah, I usually start between 5:30 and 7 most mornings. I just love that early, the energy you have and the focus and no distractions.
Yeah.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Can you talk about how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, sure. So we've added a few people. I've got some offshore staff as well that do all our back end administration. And that's been really good.
And they're based in the Philippines, aren't they?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a couple of. Yeah, I've got a good couple of team members over there as well. They find them really good workers.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity some years ago to employ who is now our sales manager. At the time, it was. He was a real quality person. I really wanted to get on board. We were looking for someone in a sales manager capacity. He actually came to me from one of my biggest clients, and I knew that he was worth getting on board, but also knew that I really couldn't afford that step at that time. But one of my mottos in my business is bite off more than you can chew, and chew like hell. And so that's what I did. I just said, right, this is too good an opportunity. He's too good a guy not to get on board. And so we did a deal, and agreed to a package and signed him up. And then I'm like, right, how the hell am I going to pay for this? But he's been invaluable to the company and critical to the growth that we needed the people on board, and it was the only way the business was going to move forward. So I bit the bullet and did it, and it's been great.
Well, that's a good outcome. Have you got any not so successful hires or anything people can learn?
Yeah, first time I went offshore, I didn't do it well. Certainly on me more so than the person I put on. And since then, we've made some really good changes, and it's a critical part of our business now. Really, and I going offshore has a bit of a bad reputation, but I've got someone there. I pay them more than they asked for when they started. I really look after them well. They were working from home for a period of time. We've got an office that we pay for, but they're working from home for a period of time, and they were sitting there in 35 degrees in the Philippines. And so during that time, I paid for them to get an air conditioner put into their home, so it was more comfortable for them. And so I really look after them well, pay them a little bit more than they asked for, so they're well looked after. And got a really good job, and they serve a really good purpose for our company. So it's a really good win.
Yeah, that's good. And obviously leveraging arbitrage, different economies, lower cost of living, but also I find with our team, we've got two in the Philippines, Peter in Kenya, obviously. It's just great to be able to support families in other nations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we offer a really good job for where they're working. Mm-hmm. And look after them pretty well.
And what are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Yeah, making sure your staff are really valued. We have even though we've got staff overseas, we have a daily video call with all our staff together, and that really helps develop culture. We don't talk about really much to do with the business on that call. It's more about what's going on today. There's always a bit of a joking back and forward about the different weather in the different places. A lot of the staff who don't live in Metro Melbourne paying out the ones that do at the moment, because
lockdown.
Melbourne are all in lockdown. The ones that are in other parts of the world and the country are footloose and fancy free. Yeah, and that's just a time for everyone just to have a chat. Ignore the phones. We've got an overflow reception service for those phone calls if they get missed during that period of time, and everyone just is really a part of the community, and that's been really good, because it really solidifies that team. And occasionally there's one person who's not available, but we really try and make it a sort of not negotiable for working in the company, is that for that 10 or 15 minutes you're on board every day.
Yeah, good.
And that's been really good for developing our culture.
Now on to the big question that the main reason why I wanted to have you on the cast was tell our audience a bit about balance and how you've approached that, because I think it's unique in small business ownership, what I heard when you spoke with Tim.
Sure. Yeah, my wife and I always, we started the business, we always wanted to make our family the priority, not the other way around. I think the family got time and then the business got time, not the other way around. And so I very rarely ever work a night time. I very rarely ever work a weekend. There is no doubt I would have a bigger business, and there's no doubt I would have made more money had I taken a different approach. But we decided that our kids were, and our family was critically important, and we refused to compromise on that. And so we've prioritised our family right from the start. I always make sure I've gone to football games and ballet concerts and school concerts and everything else you could possibly think of. I've made sure I was available for whenever was humanly possible.
That's wonderful, Luke, because I think a lot of people miss that, or they learn a little mid-business career, or perhaps some too late in career or never. I think that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, so it's something we've done right from the start, and my kids are all late teens, early 20s now. And one thing I've done right through their school life is
I love this bit.
I give them a surprise day off once a year. So it started when they were really little, and I loaded up the station wagon with all the beach gear, and the kids got ready for school like normal, and I pretended to take them to school. And I drove right through the schoolyard to where I would normally drop them off, and then just kept driving. And they were looking at me, and I said, turn around, look in the back, and they all see the bodyboards and the towels and everything. And we just went down the beach for the day. And
they would have been so excited.
Yeah, it's great. And my phone was off, and that day they were the most important thing, no matter what. And I've done it every year. And sometimes we've done things that have cost money. Other times it's just been like going to the beach. We've gone to aquariums, we've gone to rope courses, we've gone to water parks, anything you can think of. And as the kids have finished school, there's been less and less kids to do. Last year I had my daughter catches because they all cotton on, right? So now they're like, every time I take them to school, they're wondering if it's a secret day off, right?
Yeah.
So last year my daughter, I only got one daughter left at school now, and she caught the bus to school, and then I raced the bus to school to get to the car park before she did. So then she's walking through the car park, and I said, "Hey, let's go." And I took her out for the day, and they love it. And I actually asked one of my daughters. I've got 3 daughters and a son. I was thinking about this the other day, and I asked her what her favourite memories of my parenting were. Not us as a couple, but what her favourite memories of her childhood were with me. And 2 of my daughters straight up said secret day off.
Yeah, right.
It's their favourite. One of their favourite memories relating to their father from their whole childhood is the time I went, "You're the most important thing in my life today. Let's go." And it cost me a day a year.
Yeah, that's right. Well done, Luke. It's a great attitude to have and behaviour as well, obviously. When I heard that on Tim's cast, I told Maggie, my daughter, 7-year-old, the next day, her eyes wide open, "Can we do that tomorrow?" I said, "No, it's a surprise. You got to wait."
Yeah, look, anybody out there, no matter how old your kids are, it's just such an incredibly valuable thing. And sometimes it's taken quite some planning, because as the kids get older, you've got to factor in, what school tests or important classes that they might have on. And I've sometimes had to plan it 2 or 3 months in advance as the kids have got older. When they're 7 years old, you can do it any day you like. But as they get older, it's been more difficult. but I've always planned it. My youngest daughter's wanting to be a tradie, and last year, I guess they didn't do it this year, but Bunnings had a day just for their trade club members. And so I took my 16-year-old daughter to a Bunnings exhibition for the day. We wandered around, and they've got all free merchandise from Bunnings and free merchandise from all the other suppliers. And we just wandered around looking at tools and things all day. And she had a great day. It was the best day ever.
Yes.
So you just tailor it to the kids and what they enjoy most, and off you go.
Yeah. And how much professional development did you invest in yourself over the years? Books, podcasts, courses, training, conferences?
Yeah, well, I mentioned Business Blueprint before, which is a program I'm involved in, and that's certainly not cheap. I've been in that for 4 or 5 years now, and incredibly valuable program to be involved in. Highly recommend anyone looking to grow their business to look up Business Blueprint, and that's been a lot of resources available, and I have been part of that for some time. But part of that program is we meet with what's called an accountability team. So you meet with a few other business owners every few weeks. And as part of that, we set tasks and goals for each other to follow up on. Because it's easy in business if you don't have that accountability or any other business owners. If it's just you, it's easy just to go, I'm not going to do that, or to sometimes not get as motivated. So part of that is have this accountability team. And so we meet and built into that, I have, I want to read. We meet every 3 weeks, and part of that is I want to read a business book every 3 weeks, and I know that those guys are going to ask me, have I done it next meeting? And so that's all part of my development as a business owner.
Yeah, that's good. And I think accountability is really important. And that leads me on to the next 2 questions. If you've had any mentors or coaches, apart from the Business Blueprint, have you had mentors or coaches over the time?
I dabbled with coaches before I went with Business Blueprint, and I found the coaches, because my business is quite specific. I didn't find I had the level of expertise from one person looking into my business that was really useful. Whereas when I could go to an event like that where there were a couple of hundred business owners and you could pick and choose from all the resources that were available, I found that to be more useful for me. I didn't find a personal coach was worthwhile. I did try it a couple of times, but I didn't last very long with that. It just didn't really work for my business.
Yep. And what about a board of directors or advisors? Speaking of accountability, do you have one at the moment or had one?
No, I don't. I certainly have people whose brains I pick and who I chat with regularly, but I don't have a board as such.
Yep. And before we get on to the final 5 questions, you're one of the few that I've had on that have financially exited some business partners. Have you got anything else around that exit you want to talk about or advice you'd give? Any other comments on that?
Not really. It was a very challenging period of time because although the emotion was somewhat removed because we were all trying to achieve the same role, there wasn't any sort of anger or no one had done the wrong thing. It was still a really challenging period of time to navigate through, and it would have been a lot easier had we done different things like we talked about before, making sure we had that exit pathway agreed at start. Would have made life easier. But yeah, that was it. Had we done that, it certainly would have made that process better.
And did you use a mediator at all or anyone in the middle?
There was a lawyer involved in helping us sort it out, but we didn't have a mediator as such.
I do recommend if people do get into a bit of a mess, especially if there's emotion involved, do use a mediator because it's a trained skill. And lawyers have their place, but mediators also can bring a lot of benefit to those tricky times.
Yeah.
All right, Luke, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
For my particular style of business, as a wholesale distribution, is certainly funding it. Mm-hmm. That's been the greatest challenge I've had. I don't come from a family with a lot of funds. It was both my parents and my wife's parents both spent their entire careers as ministers. So that's not unless you run a big church in America, it tends not to be one you make a lot of money out of.
Yeah.
So there wasn't just family members we could go to and say, hey, can you lend us some money or spot us for a period of time? So that was certainly a challenge for us. We just had to find a way to make it work, and there wasn't anyone to help us do that, and even the banks weren't being overly friendly for quite a period of time. So that was certainly the most difficult part for us.
And favourite business book, which has helped you the most?
I really enjoyed Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, which is a story of growing Nike.
Nike, yeah. He started in selling sneakers in the back of his station wagon, didn't he? I think in football parking lots,
Yeah, my favourite story, and it comes back to the bite off more than you can chew and chew like hell statement that I made before. My favourite story from the book is he was selling a brand called Tiger Shoes before he started Nike, and he had the distribution rights, a Japanese brand, and he had the distribution rights for, I think, 13 states in America at the time of this story. And he went over to meet with them in Japan, and he said to them that he wanted nationwide rights in America. And they said to him, well, you can't have nationwide rights because you haven't got an office on the East Coast of America. You've only got an office on the West Coast. And he said to them, no, we've got an office on the East Coast as well. and they said, oh, okay. So then they did the agreement, and they signed up the contract for him to have a nationwide distribution.
Yep.
He left the meeting and called. Of course, he had no office on the East Coast. He left the meeting and called his 2IC in America and said,
get us an office.
You need to find out the best place to set up an office on the East Coast of America and set it up now.
Yep.
And even while the shipment of shoes was on the way to the East Coast office, they didn't actually have an address to send the shoes to. They were just landing at the wharf. And then they were going to send them. And so, but yeah, I really enjoyed the story. In fact, I think you could actually, if you read the story, you can actually make a really good case for the fact that he actually wasn't a very good businessman. He just stuck his neck out a few times and got pretty lucky. He's probably a very good businessman now. But at the time when he was growing the company, he just went, sure, I can do that.
Yep.
And did it, and said things like, sure, we've got an office, then worked out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
And, I just really liked his approach to just sticking his neck out, making it happen, and finding a way to make it work. It's a really good book.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development, I guess, apart from the Blueprint?
Yeah, well, I do listen to the Small Business Big Marketing, where you heard me on Tim Reed's podcast. So I tend to listen to that while I'm out mountain biking and have it in my ears and riding the trails.
Yep.
So I really enjoy that. It's a good variety of guests on there. People have achieved some pretty great things, like Melanie Perkins, who started Canva. Incredible story about she again just stuck her neck out and found a way to make it happen.
Yeah, phenomenal. They're valued at, I think, nearly $2 billion now, an Australian online company. They started in Perth, from memory, in their bedrooms. And, and pivoted as well. They didn't just stay with what they were doing,
Yeah, and we use Canva in our business every day. It's a quality product, and her story is really impressive.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think for us, and it's very, very boring, but it's systemizing, and I use Google Sites for that. So because in a small team or even in a big team, if you're not using a system like that, it's just critical. So what I do in Google Sites is every time there's a new procedure, so I've just merged the business over to Zoho from another CRM package.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the first time I work out how to do something, I record a video of myself doing that process.
So Google Sites is like an online operations manual.
Google Sites it's like having your own internal website for your business.
Got it. Yeah.
That's only accessible for people within your staff. And if you've got a Google account, you've got access to setting up Google Sites.
Yep.
And so it looks just like a basic website. There's no fanciness to it. It's because it's not what it's designed for. It's just designed for you to put procedures and product manuals, and incredibly easy to set up. And so I record a video of myself doing a procedure, and then immediately go to Google Sites, update the relevant page on Google Sites, which takes about 5 seconds, and then that video is available for all our staff to see. So this is how I want you to do this process. Bang, 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 done. And it's absolutely critical for growing the business, because I don't then have to field 40 phone calls on how to do it. Just make it happen.
That's genius, Luke. I'm very big on building operations manuals and timetables so things aren't dropped, and standard procedures are followed easily, especially when you can delegate offshore. But I haven't done any of what you've just said then of actually videoing them or videoing you working, moving around some software. And I think that's a great leverage of time.
So for those that are interested, there's a Google Chrome download called Screencastify. You have to be a Google customer for this to work, obviously.
I love Google.
You download it, add an extension called Screencastify.
Yep.
That will just simply record what you're doing on the screen, and it records your voice and what's the mouse movement and everything. So you record yourself doing a process, and then you go to Google Sites and simply insert that file into Google Sites, and within 2 minutes, it's live on your internet and everyone can see how to do it.
Wow, I'm going to check that out right after this cast. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. We'll put that in the show notes, that Chrome add-on as well.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, finally, my favourite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
There's something else I worked out early on was to work out what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So to find out what you don't know how to do. And that was part of me joining Business Blueprint was I didn't know how to do a bunch of stuff, and I knew that I didn't know. Then I had to find out. So I would have done that earlier. I would have found out what I didn't know. And I know that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but to go, there's got to be a way to do this. I don't know how to do it. Let's find it.
Yeah.
And get in a program or a coaching system that enables you to find out that information.
Yep. Great. Well, that's very sage advice, Luke. Thank you very much for your time today, and especially sharing your thoughts and words, and your history of putting balance front and center of your business right from day one.
Yeah, that's been critical for me. It's I've got a great relationship with my kids now. I'm good friends with my kids as adults, which is what I always wanted to be.
Yep.
And I think it's been critical to that has been the fact that they always knew they were really important and valuable.
Yeah, it's something that I went into my business journey, and particularly when my daughter turned up, was very, very big on, because I have seen, colleagues, friends that have gone with a very, very financial mindset, and then they've turned around, retired, sold out, and don't have a relationship with their kids, or a strong relationship with their kids or their partner even, and marriage disintegrates, etc. So it's, really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Luke.
No worries.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.